cost of supplies. So this actually entails that Eskom is actually recovering revenues, its own revenues. So this would actually not result in an industry or industry reflective tariffs for municipalities per se. So that approach was also then abandoned. So now the third approach is the one I'm of the view that it's supposed to be the most desirable. And this approach is the one that entails approving municipal tariffs based on their own comprehensive cost of supply studies. So, but now this is actually in line with the EPP. That would then allow NERSA to assess these tariffs for prudence and efficiency. So now, as I've indicated, even though that this is the most desirable approach for the current tariff cycle, you find that one of the key challenges we have in taking this approach is that there's only a handful of municipalities who have been able to submit cost of supplies, and even fewer studies have been approved by NERSA as a result of a variety of reasons, but the key one being the quality of submissions are not at a stage whereby we are comfortable to be approving all of the studies we have received to date. So the final option we explored is approving the guideline increase and benchmarks the same way we've been doing, to allow us time to explore the other desirable approaches. So obviously, for reasons that I've mentioned on the options that we've explored, we could not go with approach 1 to 3. So approach 4 is actually the most effective in terms of its simplicity to implement immediately. In terms of immediate implementability, that's the one that we've recommended, and we can find that on its page, yes, from page 10. With that being said, it is recommended that the members approve the consultation paper on the municipal guideline increase and benchmarks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Thabo. Yeah, I'm hoping, because I was hoping that maybe you may have expanded a little bit on option 4, considering the actual that some members may not have had enough time to actually go through it. I'm not sure if you can expand a little bit on that.
Oh, thank you, Chair. So option 4 actually entails approving municipal tariffs based on guideline increase and the tariff benchmarks. So so this approach means that the guideline increase is actually developed based on Eskom's approved bulk purchase, which was then which was dependent on the recently approved ERTA. So this is actually the same way we had been approving tariffs historically. How it works is that we calculate a guideline increase based on the municipalities, the group of municipal cost structures. We calculate a guideline increase based on the various cost drivers to those various elements. And then that's then how we get to the guideline increase. And then we use municipal benchmarks to then get to make tariff approvals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Thabo. Although you were, apologies, you were a little bit more brief than I thought you would be, but nonetheless, members, there is a presentation before us. If we perhaps can ask questions of clarity and maybe offer guidance where possible, and remembering that it is still a consultation paper, we still have an opportunity to actually engage with it further when it's whilst we are consulting and after consultation. So there is further opportunities for engagement. Madam Pongosa.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Mr. Shabalala, for your presentation and for trying to slightly give a bit more information on the option 4 that you've decided to go with, which is to use the ERTA, the guideline tariff. If you can just also highlight what other factors have been taken into account in making those benchmarks, especially taking into account that the sensitivities for municipalities are unique, and there are certain things that you'll also have to factor over and above the ERTA in coming with that particular guideline tariff. So it would really assist if you can also highlight all those factors that are unique to municipalities that you've also taken into account to come up, in coming up with that final guideline tariff. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Madam. Madam Masetti.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I would like to start off with the issue of the approach that we have been using, which is approach 4. My angle or my line of questioning of approach 4 relates to the previous challenge by one of the municipalities, I think 2 or so, I can't remember, here in Gauteng regarding NERSA's continued use of benchmarks and guidelines to determine municipal tariffs. And I just want to find out, because now it's more than 8 years we have been talking about the same thing in these committees before we take decisions, that we need to comply with the law. We need to comply with the electricity pricing policy, as well as the Electricity Regulations Act, so that the decisions that we take are decisions that are well informed by the legal provisions of the law itself, as well as the policy. Now, it is very clear that we are supposed to take this to approve tariffs that are determined in terms of the actual cost to supply that are incurred by each of these licensees, these distributors. But obviously, approach 4 is not doing what the law requires or the policy requires. And we're also not, we don't have any other mechanism of now comparing what the benchmark is, as well as or relative to the actual costs that are incurred by each of these. So when are we going to start the process? Because I think every time we tell the team to go and do something, it's never done, Chairperson. I think it is important that now we put time frames, even for NERSA itself, to now move towards complying fully with the law as well as the policy by considering the cost of supply as it's required in the law. So it is important whether we are going to do this in phases, Chairperson, so that we make sure that at least from our side, we develop a document that will guide the municipalities in terms of determining their tariffs to bring to NERSA, but those tariffs must be improved by the costs that are incurred by these municipalities. So we may then need to develop a framework on how they are supposed to calculate their cost of supply, as well as then determining tariffs based on the cost of supply. That is the first thing, Chairperson, and that must be part of the transitional arrangement that we have to approve. And now it must be the decision of the energy regulator that is glaring when we decide we take a final decision on this, so that the team begins to work on this, because at the end of the day, it is NERSA that gets attacked by stakeholders for not doing what the law requires of it to do. So if we have been doing it for 10 years and we are also faced with these kind of results, sometimes some of these results, Chairperson, they also result in the results that promote inefficiencies, especially if you also look at the proposals that we have on table 1 regarding the financial indicators. Look at the acceptable range. What have we used here? We keep on increasing even the energy losses here, So if we increase energy losses, and then we also increase the repairs and maintenance, but we never even ask for those plans, maintenance plan, and repair and maintenance plan from the licensees, and then check what is it that they have done, in terms of utilizing the money or the allowance that we give them? We don't do that, not even once, and we keep on asking the team to do so. And Chairperson, again, with the energy losses, if you increase it and say, okay, the benchmark is 10, but the acceptable range is 5 to 12 and all of that, where do we get this? Because at the end of the day, we say, no, it's at an acceptable range, So we need to deal with those things, Chairperson, because if we look at that table, we need to look at what are some of the efficiency considerations made by the team to come to this, except just to see how the other municipality performed. And then we take all of that, we average it. And then we say, this is how we are going to regulate. That can't be, Chairperson. We regulate because we want to promote efficiency. But if we cannot justify that table 1, for instance, is one of those things where we might not be able to justify our approach based on rationality. So it is something that must now be taken seriously, Chairperson, and we have been mentioning it for the past 8 years. And there is nothing that the team has come forward to the energy regulator and say, this is what we have done. And I think now it must be part of the decision. Then, Chairperson, the other point that I wanted to raise is on paragraph 3.3.2 on approach 3. Approach 3 is the one that we ought to have followed, but we didn't. Perhaps is the way that we have put that paragraph there that makes reference to us anticipating the unbundling of Eskom into generations, transmission, and distribution. How does approach 3, or the fact that we have not followed it, assist us in anticipating this unbundling? Perhaps is the way to link the two paragraphs, the one 3.31 and 3.32, so that we can all understand what exactly do we mean there by saying we're not following the law, we're not following what we're supposed to do. And this is because we are anticipating that Eskom is going to embark on an unbundling of its business into separate functional business units. How is that helping us in any way? How is that convenient to the energy regulator? I'm trying to get the message that we are conveying in paragraph 3.32, if we can just make that clear. And then, Chairperson, the other issue that I wanted to just raise, Chairperson, simply because we are following approach 4 without any cost considerations, so that we can see to what extent others may have excess excess surplus, if I may put it that way. How do we then make sure that we feature in affordability assessment in this whole approach that we have come up with, so that we can be able to prove that at least we have taken that factor into consideration? I think it will be important for us to feature in an affordability assessment factor, Chair. Then moving on to perhaps the improvements in this document, Chairperson, if we could also just clarify right up front the scope of this consultation document or the benchmarks that we have come up with. You will recall, Chairperson, that there are now these the tariffs for the SSEGs. So I don't know how we are determining tariffs for those and approvals for those. So it might also be important that we clarify that in this document, Chair, just so that we are clear in terms of the approach. On paragraph 1.1, that is where we deal with the executive summary, and perhaps it is something that we can also put under background, actually, Chairperson, when we deal with the background as to what happened and why we do what we're doing now. So that in that paragraph at the end, because we left it somewhere where we said there was relief sought and the court granted that relief to Eskom, compelling NERSA to use the MYPD4 methodology, and then we leave it at that, and then we say, in light of the above, then the consultation paper was developed. No, the consultation paper was not developed immediately after the court granted Eskom that relief. The consultation paper emanates from the, we need to move on from that process to say NERSA then determined the 1 year revenue requirement in terms of section 15, and then we refer to the decision of the energy regulator for the revenue requirement that was determined for the financial year 2023. So we need to put into that in that paragraph, and also then refer to ERSA, because this is what informs now this consultation document. Otherwise, we can't say in view of the above, then this. So if we can just put it in that paragraph, Chair, so that it is clear. We may have mentioned it there, but it's not, we need to tie it up properly, because in the sequence, in a sequential form. So starting from that application by Eskom, then the rejection, the court granting the relief, then what happened after that, then this process, if we can do that, Chair. 1.4, paragraph 1.4, Chairperson, we need to just revise it so that we make a proper reference to the decision of the energy regulator for rejecting that application, the multi-year revenue application by Eskom. It is not correct to say after consideration, this application was rejected by NERSA in its executive committee meeting of 30 September 2021. It is incorrect, and then it goes on. Let's just put it succinctly, but let's reference it properly to the decision of the energy regulator that was taken in late last year. If that can be done, I don't know if it was in November or December. If we can reference to that, not the way that we've referenced it. Otherwise, it's incorrect. So that's all, Chairperson, that I would like to say at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Massetti. Mr. Shabalala, maybe can I just add just two things, just in terms of guidance. I guess the question I wanted to, in terms of Annexure A, to what extent are we going to request or expect municipalities to limit their tariffs in respect of those tables that are indicated? Are we going to allow municipalities to apply for tariffs which are outside of those benchmarks? To what extent are we going to limit, or maybe to what extent can we ask the stakeholders to indicate the usefulness of those benchmarks, maybe to indicate perhaps whether those benchmarks should be expanded or narrowed a little bit? I'm not sure. I don't think we've ever done that before, but nonetheless, I'm just wondering whether we can do that. That's one issue, Mr. Chabalala, that maybe I thought we could add to the question, or one question that we could pose to the stakeholders. Another one, by the way, in terms of Table 1, we have indicated to Eskom when they applied we have indicated that the losses, so I can't remember now, so sorry, I actually forgot the word that Eskom used in its application in respect of their revenue application. We did actually request them not to punish the paying consumers because of those that are not paying, but to explore other means of collecting that debt. Should we not consider doing something similar with municipalities? Why are we allowing those energy losses? I'm not talking about the technical losses, but the non-technical losses, which are largely non-payment and theft. Should we not explore a possibility of limiting that in the same way as we limited Eskom's part? Mr. Chabalala, I'm hoping that you've got your colleagues to assist you in responding. Some of the comments were for enhancement, but over to you, Mr. Chabalala. and the team.
Thank you, Chair. The issues raised by members have been noted, Chair, and mostly for the requests to enhance that will be done, taking into account exactly what the members have directed. Maybe the one issue I would like to touch on is the issue raised by Ms. Mpongo, sir, on, let me see, on table 2. Let me just find the page number, Chair. Yes, so Ms. Mpongo was requesting that maybe I try to explain a bit more in terms of what goes into the guideline increase. So I would like to point her to page 13 of 23, which is table 2. So in that table, we actually drill down in terms of exactly how we actually get to the guideline increase, taking into account the various expenses of municipalities and the cost driver related to that. If you look at the bulk purchases, we are increasing that by 8.6 when you, as opposed to when you look at your general expenditure, which is then increasing by inflation, etc. So if you add up all those costs and the various cost drivers, that's how we then get to that guideline increase. I'd like to note that, yes, there were a lot of issues of enhancements requested, especially from Ms. Maseti, and those will be taken into account after this meeting, Chair. And then lastly, on the issue of should we not be limiting municipalities based on in a similar way that we've been doing for ESCOM. I think, Chair, that's exactly what we've been doing. We do not allow any non-technical losses or losses as a result of theft and all those other things. So we actually do that. We do not allow that. I don't know if there's anything the team would like to add, but on the issue, you know, the issue mainly, Chair, is that there's various streams dealing with various projects. So in terms of cost of supply, there is a separate team dealing with that. So maybe a plan can be submitted from that aspect in terms of implementation, how we intend to go about it. But even in the consultation paper itself, maybe it would be worthwhile to maybe clarify some of those aspects. So that will happen also. And then even the issue of the SSEGs, that will also happen in the same breath. I don't know if there's anything the team would like to add, but thank you for now, Chair.
Thank you, Charlotte. Before the team adds, I see Mr. Mkiza has joined us. Thank you, Mr. Mkiza. We do appreciate and understand the challenges that we faced. Over to you, Mr. Mkiza. And I did recognize your hand again, Madam Pongosa, but can I just allow Mr. Mkiza?
Thank you, Chairperson. Maybe before I say anything, if you can just allow me, it's not a complaint as such. I would request that from RSU, you consider this whole issue of scheduling meetings in this fashion of an 1 hour difference, because as a host and as the bereaved entity, one has got to not look just at the program finishing at 1 o'clock, but to also consider activities that then follow after that, which require one to attend to families and all of those things. So please, because it then leaves some kind of feeling of being insensitive to those who are not attending. So they just not make sure that there is no repetition of same in future. But by and large, Chairperson, let me, if I may comment, if you allow me, or the train has left the station, may I please know, Chairperson?
No, you can comment, Mr. Mkiza, and your point has been noted.
Yes, thank you. I looked at, I'm going to look at item 5, because I had already looked through it, and then the update came much later for me. So if those comments have been taken care of, please just ignore the responses. First of all, just make sure that you are correct with the dates and reference to the ER meeting instead of the REC meetings where appropriate. And then when it comes to the delegation matrix, which is on page 3 of page 3 of 3 for the submission itself, please, if you may help to go further and outline the approval process delegation, depending on whether it is outside of the guidelines or within guidelines. So if you can help to just to make sure that when it comes to that whole issue, it becomes easier for one to take subsequent decisions. I think it will have to deal with the delegation. And I think the publishing date on the page, just if you can just make it April as is. With regard to abbreviations and acronyms on the document itself now, if you may please just ensure that you go through the document, you include all of these, because I saw like the activity-based costing is not included there, as well as financial year, EPP, ESI. If you can just include all of those. On 1.4, as I already said, that was not the executive committee meeting, but it was a meeting of the RSC. And I think on 1.5, if you may be precise, and then to say ESCOM requested which court, to be precise in terms of the court that was requested. I think on the background, it's going to be important to kind of also put a footnote to define the EPP, just a kind of a definition of the EPP. And then on 2.8, you're talking of the options there, and you said that you want to ensure that these rates are set in line with the MFA deadlines. But I don't understand, what do options have to do with the MFA deadlines as in the selection of one option over another? And I think on page 7, it will help also to kind of make it easy for the reader to understand what embedded cost of supply means in layman's term, to allow the public to easily understand, so as to be confident to comment. I mean, this applies generally throughout the document to make it easier to understand. And then the other comment that I'm having here, I don't think that you are coming strong enough with regard to municipalities failing to undertake cost of supply studies. I think this just should be very, very clear as being a non-compliance, because if that's what the regulator requires and a licensee is failing to comply with that, it should just be seen for what it is, which is non-compliance. And then with regard to stakeholder comments, I think it will help here when you go to comment number 1 to ask for potential impact of using the approach on the regulation of municipalities, and then I think include the mitigation of challenges experienced therewith, how you are going to mitigate those challenges, and then the same applies on comment number 2, where you must, I think at the end of Roman figure 2, do include the and mitigation thereof, and not leave it just open like that. Yeah, I think on 3.3.2, when you mention the economic reconstruction and recovery plan, you seem to be suggesting that the other options are not in line with the plan. Why do you mention the plan only here when you are talking of option 3? So if all options do adjust to the plan, don't just make it as if it's for one option. And again, on 3.3.3, why provide an excuse for non-compliance by licensees who got their distribution licenses on the basis that they have the financial and administrative and other abilities to deserve to be licensed? The other thing that you can add to the table is to what should be done to implement this approach such that municipalities are pushed to undertake cost of supply studies. Because if that's a prerequisite, then I think it's important to ask questions around how we can get these licenses to comply with what is going to be required. And then on the electricity pricing and all that, just make sure that you're using proper formulas, the way you have written them, that they can be easily understood and you are consistent throughout in terms of what you use to determine these to insert the formulas there. And then yeah, I think other than that, that was actually all from my side, just to ensure that you assist the reader to comment, allowing not only experts or people that are well versed with this sector to comment, but even the general public to be able to comment. I think that we should move towards that. I will leave it at that from my side, Chairperson, and thanks for the opportunity, though I'm late, and I hope the apology has already been provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize. Yes, the apology was provided by Secretariat. Madam Pongoso, I saw your hand was up. Follow up, ma'am?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson, for the indulgence. I actually had a follow-up for Mr. Shabalala and team. Just to explain to him what I explained, I've seen the table 2 and the provisions in table 2, what factors were taken into account. The level of detail that I was hoping you could explain is, for instance, the charges from other departments. Are those the departments that provide interdependencies to the electricity department of the municipality? And then also, for instance, your billing, your revenue collection, metering, and all those. And also for them to also say, I think during the public hearings, when we're having public hearings, for instance, the Val Chamber of Commerce or Business, as well as the PMB, Pietermaritzburg one, raise issues of neglected infrastructure, and lack of maintenance, which they say it somehow contributes to load shedding and unavailability of electricity and system being down at any given time because there's no security around the infrastructure. So to just illustrate to us that those charges and percentage that has been allowed for the necessary repairs and maintenance, that it can be justifiable, or it can be justifiable, that it is indeed necessary repairs and maintenance that has indeed been done or conducted. They verified that. So I wanted that level of detail. And also I think I've highlighted all the key ones. I think I've explained what sort of detail that I was hoping that he'll be able to explain to us, and also to just show us that the bad debt provision that he has made, and the efficiency gains, and also to make sure that the municipalities must also, I share the sentiment by Mr. Mkhize to say that we've given them a framework or template for how they must develop the cost of supply study. And we do believe that we've given them enough support and guidance for them to know what is required to be covered in those and the detail needed in those cost of supply studies. If indeed we still have an issue with non-complying studies being furnished to us that are not giving us the comprehensive and necessary information that we require, I think we should, use the carrot and stick approach. We've enabled them to be able to fulfill. However, if they remain non-compliant, I think we need to consider, exercising our rights as the regulator to say, how do we enforce to make sure that they comply? Because they've been given everything that they need. They've been supported and guided on what is required. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Mr. Chawala, before you respond, can I maybe just guide, maybe you can clarify this properly. You had indicated this different approaches 1 to 4, and that we then, because of challenges with approach 3, we then use approach 4. But from what I've understood, if you can clarify this to members, is that the preferred approach, of course, which takes into account the plan for us in terms of changing the pricing system, would have been approach 1, which, because of all of the issues that have been linked to that approach one. That approach one is not going to be used this year. But if you can indicate the view around approach one in terms of perhaps even if it's not done this year, that perhaps the view might be to do it to start when, and therefore how that links up with the failure of municipalities to provide this cost of supply studies and how that can be remedied by approach one. If maybe you can just highlight that a little bit, and also how approach one would link up with the MFMA deadlines and timelines. Would just expand a little bit on that, Mr. Chabalala. I think it may also assist members and also address a number of the questions that have been raised by members. Thanks.
The team will do that. Thank you, Chair.
When we say the team, so the beauty is that unfortunately I'm not sure, I can't see Mr. Mavuso and I can't see Mr. Sichotro either. So if you can just point out, if you can direct the questions to particular people, that would be useful, Mr. Chabalala.
Okay, I will do that, sir.
Right, please proceed.
Yeah, the other issues that were raised were actually, again, issues of maybe we're required to expand a bit more on some of the issues. I've noted that from Ms. Mpongose and also Mr. Mkize. So normally some of these other issues only then come out at the stage whereby we are actually approving these municipal tariffs. So that's why some of the issues you don't see us expanding on them. So I think what I'll do is that some of the key issues I will then start to maybe touch on them, especially around repairs and maintenance, because normally what we do is that we do request municipalities to provide us with some of these reports, but having now looked at it, it's quite clear that it's not coming out on this particular document itself. So what we'll do is that we'll expand on some of the requirements that we normally would actually reserve for when we are approving tariffs. So we will enhance that around that to make sure that it flows nicely. Also, what you've actually noted in terms of expanding on the various options that have been presented, that will also then happen. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Colleagues, from what I understand, what Mr. Chabalala is saying is that, in the main, is looking at our inputs and our questions rather to enhance the document before it is published. For instance, the issue that has been raised by yourself, Madam Pumose, that to basically provide the detail, that they will then provide the detail in the final document, and all of the issues of enhancements that have been raised by all of us colleagues, that they will then expand on that. I'm not sure that Mr. Chabalala is ducking questions, or am I reading you correctly, Mr. Chabalala, that what you are saying is that you are taking most of the questions asked by members as a guide to how you can enhance the actual consultation paper. Am I correct?
100%, sir.
All right. So, colleagues, with that, apologies. I guess it is today's meeting is also, it may be a bit unfair because he is actually mostly on his own. Ordinarily, you would have all of his other members here. I see Dr. Konjola is here and others, but perhaps it would have been useful if Mrs. Chotro was also here. However, from what I'm then understanding, members, is that the Tabo and the team have taken note of your concerns and questions and guidance, and they will enhance the consultation paper before it is published, including expanding a little bit on those options and the issues around the consultation and around the cost of supply studies and so forth. But Mr. Mkize, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thanks, Chairperson. It's not real much. You recall that recently there was a document that the ELR division came back with on the issues that were raised during the approval of municipal tariffs. That I think some of these things. My question is, aren't there any issues in there that could require some form of public input in terms of understanding these issues conclusively and therefore being able to effect change, or we seek to do that as a separate issue. For example, even the same thing with maintenance, because if it's 12, if it's 6% to 15%, say for example, what difference does it make whether I've got infrastructure that is 12 billion or 25 billion? I just want to, there are these issues that have been raised, and I think that in the write-up, some of these things can help to raise them here to make the process more useful. But if they feel that it's going to confuse issues, then it's fine. But those things, I think some of them, they require also public viewpoints. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhize, for that. So, Mr. Shabalala, if you recall, there was a report that was dealt with by ELS. I think it was an ELS, I think ELS or REC, but that's a report that looked at the at some of the comments that were raised by REC members as well as ELS members. And that report looked at basically you guys provided a bit of responses and guidelines. So the question is, maybe have a look at that and see whether any of the issues that are raised in those reports can be included in this consultation paper, can be consulted on now, as opposed to being consulted later as we finalize the pricing system. So that's also an enhancement, Mr. Chabalala.
Noted, Chair. I actually agree 100% with Mr. Mkhize on this one. If there are certain other questions that we could put to stakeholders, we'll be looking to be doing that, also based on other issues that have been identified. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chabalala. Colleagues, we are 15 minutes over the allotted 1 hour. I am aware that we might be losing one member. Has a meeting that had to be shifted from 3 to 3:30 to accommodate the lateness of the start of this meeting. Unless members, you have got any further burning issue, can I move us to a decision, please? Mr. Mkhize, your hand is still up, or is it a lingering hand, sir? Mr. Mkhize, lingering hand? Thank you.
Lingering hand, sorry.
All right. No, thank you. Colleagues, if unless there are further questions or guidance that needs to be sent, that we need to provide to the team, which cannot be provided in writing, colleagues, because that's also, that part is not closed. If we can send your annotations through to the team as well, that would be welcomed. I think it will just enhance the actual document itself. So all your annotations, as I was listening to Mr. Mkhize, I could see that he's reading his annotations. If you can kindly forward those, Mr. Mkhize, to the team, that would be very, very useful. Again, we've noted the points raised by Madam Maseti on chat. So with that, colleagues, unless there is something really burning, can I move us to a decision? Which is the actual, but basically the team is here to ask that the subcommittee, as per the delegation matrix, that it approves the consultation paper, which is here to annex as Annexure 1 for stakeholder consultation and for publication on the NERSA website, as well as on Facebook, Twitter, and Government Gazette, and also in various local newspapers. Colleagues, by show of hands, could we approve, please, with all of the enhancements that have been provided? Thank you, Madam Bungose, Madam Maseti. I also support approval. Mr. Mkhize, would you approve? Thank you, sir. Mr. Chabalala, I know you ducked a number of the answers and are responding directly to the members, but you've got your marching orders. Members have indicated areas of improvement that they may seek on the consultation paper, but you've got your decision, sir.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. With that, this brings us to the close of the open meeting. Mr. Lamin, so that we don't disrupt the meeting, I know it's been lengthy, Would I be wrong if I requested that we postpone agenda item number 6 concerning the time and also other issues, and the fact that if we had opened the meeting and invited other stakeholders, just so that we don't discuss any of these internal matters in public? Would I be wrong if I asked that we postpone that matter?
I think it can be postponed, Mr. Kumete.
All right. Members, colleagues, members of staff, with a sad heart, a heavy heart at the loss of our chairperson, can I ask that we then adjourn this meeting, and we will meet again at I think we've got a couple of special meetings this week. One is coming through tomorrow. So with that, members, the meeting is adjourned. I thank you all.
Thank you, Chairperson and members. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Kumete.
Thank you.